future. I mean, this is how this works. And the Chinese, I think, ultimately are behind it. There's some good evidence that, I and a bunch of other tiny little Davids, but we do have the truth on our side. And eventually, I think, eventually it's going to get really expensive, so that's going to have another part of it, is they're very well funded. The National NRDC, Environmental Defense Fund, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, they get money from China. The Russians funded money with our green groups to fight these policies. They did it in Europe, they did it here. That's the real Russian collusion. They do it through shell companies. The Chinese are even better. The Chinese, by the way, have infiltrated our university systems. They give a lot of money, they do all kinds of things, and they steal from us our knowledge, our things. So the Chinese are in on it, and then the Chinese benefit because they make most of the wind and solar and all of that kind of stuff. So we send hundreds of billions of dollars to them, which helps their economy, helps all of them. And they produce 90%, refine 90% of the lithium in the world, and it's the needed because it's so dirty, and they have very little environmental laws. So that's one side of it. Then you have very smart people here making a whole lot of money on it. And you create politician slush funds and that's what they just did, to dole out money now, $9 billion in hydrogen. I mean, it's just wasted money. I mean, we're wasting a whole lot of money for some people who get really rich. Can you remember Solyndra? It was $500 million, and it's gone. So that part of it. Then you've got useful idiots who need a cause. They don't have real religion anymore, so it has become a religion to them. We have people who the misinformation is so thick and fierce that they buy into it. And they also have bought, and many of us have heard wind and solar is cheap, it's going to lower our electric bills. They're still saying this stuff. Because everywhere in the world, I showed you the facts, everywhere in the world is exactly we're living in an upside down world. Climate is upside down world if you've ever watched Stranger Things. It's just nuts. I mean, it's absolutely upside down from what the reality is on almost everything that they're telling us.
Okay, thanks. Rick?
Yeah, I read recently that the Baker Hughes rig count is now at pre-pandemic levels. If that's true, will gasoline prices be coming down?
Probably not. And because the real constraint, and I was working this and I went through so fast on those, but the real constraint is our refinery capacity. And we can produce more oil, but we can't refine it any faster. Now what's happening in the world is the Russians are now selling their oil and natural gas. They're having a little trouble getting it there, but they sell it to the Iranians, the Chinese, and the Indians. And the Indians and the Chinese are both refining it and then shipping the diesel and other things around the world. So if we can tap into some of that, but Europe needs it so bad. And kind of going back to your question, just while I think of it, about your high costs of electricity here, this area is buying LNG on world market prices, competing with Europe, which is like 10 times more than what it is naturally here in the United States, because we can't ship it all the way, because the fools won't allow any more natural gas pipelines to be built.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's another reason your electric rates are real high. But you get a small portion, but you're in part of a kind of a electric sharing, grid sharing thing with New England ISO. They have a bunch of states grouped together and they share prices and a variety of, it's complicated.
Okay, so Lily had a question over here.
Actually, I grew up in China, Frank, so I know what you're talking about. Like you mentioned, that this climate change, like a new religion pushed down on people, it's only happening in the West. So I'm wondering, in the West, free democracy countries, what are the major players, influencers, power grabbers who really are pushing for this and get lots of useful idiots to buy it, but at the same time they're paying the high price. Then China at the same time has no congressional oversight, come to our country, buying land and set up an agricultural business, but they also build their potential solar, wind powers, even near our military force. So do you think our politicians sold us out on purpose? Because they're still buying beachfront properties, they have lots of money. But that means they are colluding with the Chinese government, CCP, to destroy the Western civilization. What do you take on that?
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think it is that insidious and ugly and bad.
And half people in this country don't know about that? Or?
No, the problem with, and you guys get this with elections, is that you have partisans who pay attention. You have a whole lot of people that Rush Limbaugh used to call low information voters. And they just don't, and I call them even groundhog voters. They poke their head up a day or 3 or a week before the election and then just decide how to vote. And they don't know, they're know-nothings, and they only get what they get in the media. They don't watch news or anything, but they kind of get this stuff filtered through. I mean, my wife gets her hair dressed by a woman who would fit in that one, who's very, pays attention a little bit, but doesn't read any news or anything, but knows about the major climate issues. Somehow it filters through, oh my, there's something bad. So China's part of it, our politicians are making money at it, but some of them are selling them out. There's huge dollars involved, and also the unholy alliance, and again, I want to find a way to really solve the root problem, is if a utility can double its size, they can make twice as much money. So they get 10%. The way most states work is a little different from states, but they have about 10%. So they are a $100 billion company, billing $100 billion. They get to tack on 10%, so they bill 110, and their shareholders and others, they get 10 billion in profit. Now, if they can grow themselves into a $200 billion company, they now get 20 billion in profit, and they also, now their shareholders have shares of a company that's twice the size. So there's another alignment of special interests. They go, oh, and we're just giving them what they want. So you've got a variety of levels of this, and they've been at it a very long time. They've been brainwashing their children, and it's too bad these young boys weren't even here listening, but they've been brainwashing their kids. The 30 and under crowd, they know climate change is bad. You try to talk them facts, no. NASA, NOAA, your facts are bad. Oh, I don't know, what facts do you have? My teacher told me.
So Frank, I just wanted to shift gears just a little bit with the question. Talk about climate, talk about energy. A lot of the young people are concerned about a clean environment, and electric cars are kind of put out there as a clean alternative. And can you talk about clean energy, with respect to the coal plants? We have a lot of coal, a lot of energy generated by coal, but how do we sell the environmental cleanliness of what we can do with fossil fuels versus an electric car that has to use a lot of fossil fuels to get there?
Well, first off is, once you know that CO2 is necessary plant food and it isn't the control knob of the climate, then CO2 goes off the table. Then there's no reason that you shouldn't use natural gas, and we have it hugely abundant. And it's really, truly pollution-free. You burn natural gas, it's 1 carbon and 4 hydrogens. 1 carbon, 4 hydrogens. You burn it, you get CO2 and water. Great. No pollutants. It's clean. And they can purify it if there's little impurities. In fact, they don't want the impurities. They take them out. They gum things up, screw things up. Coal. We have clean coal technology, which China and the rest of the world doesn't use at all. And interesting, how they talked about acid rain. They talked about particulates possibly cooling the planet. We're using far more coal, and far more dirty coal in the whole world is being burned, so we have more particulates. We're here cleaner. I mean, here in the United States, the air, water, everything here, virtually everywhere in the country, even in LA, are far cleaner than they were 20 or 40 or 50 years ago. But ask kids, and 9 out of 10 will tell you just the opposite. But coal is very clean, and those solids are used for a variety of other things that come out of it. We give up 20% of the energy it generates by doing that. So, but first off, that CO2, and I do think as conservatives, it's a problem. And very clever, these folks, because I was on it in connection with the Heartland Institute that markets free market ideas and climate truth to state legislators around the country. When I was in the legislature 25 years ago, I realized what a scam this was. And I was like, hey, there's this problem. People are, and even now, I've gone back to our Realtors Association and said, you should get involved in all this stuff because high energy prices are going to affect the home value and the ability of people to buy them and all those other things, the inputs. And they said, give us something to react to. What legislation can we react to? It's all now done by regulation. They took the long game and penetrated our corporations with wokeism. Take your money, if you got money, call to action. Take it away from BlackRock, take it away from State Street, take it away from Vanguard. Avoid every ESG fund out there like the Black Plague. There's also a guy who wrote very great, interesting, Woke Inc. is a really good book if you're interested in this. Woke Inc. by Vivek, I pronounce his name wrong, Slaughter, Schwalmawami, something like that. Vivek, he's a really smart guy, but he has created a pro-fossil fuel mutual fund that's already got like $250–300 million. Invest in that, but definitely take it away from any ESG funds out there. And you know what? They're bad investments. They're bad investments, and one of them is limiting carbon. It's one of their core things to get a good ESG score. So that means that if you're a company and you say, I can build this plant over here, but it'll hurt my ESG score, I won't do that. I'll just buy it from China. I'll just buy it from China or from Vietnam or some other place. Those are the underlying problems. So they've had a long-term game on us. And to your point on electric cars, they're not that clean. Lithium, we literally have to 10 to 20x lithium harvesting. Lithium is going through the roof, and it's going to continue to go through the roof. It is I just talked to someone in Paris, Wisconsin, where they have literally a 5,000 square acre solar farm. And they just canceled a huge industrial battery they were going to put in it because lithium is too short. So the prices are going to continue to climb. Lithium is going to continue to be short. It's to turn it into lithium ore that can be used then in a product, or into the lithium metal, is all 90% done in China. There's a reason, because they just dump the garbage right in the lakes, rivers, and streams and the dirt. They don't care. Their environmental laws are very lax, if at all. So we have some real problems, and you know, the batteries last about a decade. The other real problem with electric vehicles is the control factor, because where they're headed with this is like in China. Their cell phone is everything. And what they've done now, they've had bank riots, and they just put your phone on red and you can't travel. You can't charge your car. You can't start your car if you have one. You can't get on a bus. You can't get an Uber. You can't travel, period. Because they put you on red. They put you on yellow to warn you, maybe. So they have ultimate control, and that's where they want to put us. In the electric vehicles, think about it a little bit. When you get maybe 100,000 miles off of a car, and there are stories out there with people who get 70,000 before the battery has to be replaced, others that can go maybe 150, maybe. So now you have to put in a $10,000 to $25,000 battery. What happens to the $3,000 to $4,000 used car, or the $1,000 used car? Gone. How do poor people make it around? How do young people? How do you get that car for your kid? All that would go away. And then think about it a little bit when there's a natural disaster in Florida, or a great example of that is my daughter's friend in University of New Orleans. They had a hurricane barreling down on them, so she jumped in her gas-powered car and drove straight away to Wisconsin to weather it out at home. And she spent 8 hours doing the first hour drive out of New Orleans because the cars were so backed up. Now think if she had an electric car. Think if everyone had an electric car. Think what would happen to the electric grid when the hurricane starts coming and everybody runs to plug it in, because either if you're staying, you want it filled. And I can understand why, because then once you have it, you got it. And if you're leaving, you want it filled. What does that do to the electric grid? Oh, I know, we'll just overbuild wind and solar, and somehow. I mean, this stuff in the real world, it's not happening on the scale and speed that they are selling us, and just trying is wildly expensive. Not to mention the lithium and cobalt that goes into that battery. It takes at least 6 years, if not a dozen years, to break even. So they're front loading emissions by building electric cars, particularly when you're using coal. Like Wisconsin's 42% coal for our electricity, and West Virginia, I think, is 95% coal for their electricity. Then it takes you forever if you ever break even.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
Mr.
read
Tobin.
recently that nuclear materials in short supply. Is that
You're right.
political or?
Uranium might be. I've been catching some chatter on that. I do extensive reading every day. And I've been catching some chatter because nuclear is coming back. I mean, nuclear is coming back. The French recycle their nuclear power plant. Europe is turning to that. China, by the way, is building at least 2 nuclear power plants every single year. They're using a GE design. And why we can't use that GE design here is beyond me. Why we have to build a huge monstrosity custom. And we did just get approval for 70 megawatt nuclear power plants, and they're going to build one and have an approval to build it in the Idaho Energy Research Lab. So, but that'll take 5 to 7 to 8 years. I've seen them, they're pretty cool. They fit on the back of a semi. They're a little oversized for a semi, but the concept is put 10 or 12 of these 70 megawatts together, and then you can turn them off individually so you get some load matching ability for the electric grid. That makes a lot of sense, but now we're talking 5 to 7 years away. We've highly overregulated the nuclear world. And I asked that when I represented Point Beach Nuclear Power Plant. I said, why is it so expensive? They said, here's how it works. If you're an electrician, you gotta have nuclear training so you get paid more. And then we need 3 of us to do a job one of us could do. They send one to go do some electrical work. They send a second one to observe the first one and record that they did the work. And they send a third one to record that the second one recorded the first one properly. Really? Do we really need that with grown-ups? Maybe the second one? Maybe just somebody to come by and check. And really, it's not that critical if you're doing some electrical work on how that nuclear reactor actually works. So we've done a lot of crazy stuff that we should lower those costs to make it economical and smart again.
Okay, Nancy?
I traveled to visit my brother in Iowa about 12 years ago. And I flew into Omaha, Nebraska, and they picked me up. And I went up over this rise, and I was like flabbergasted with all these windmills, thousands. And my sister-in-law says, oh, that's the baby farm. Wait till you get up the roadways. And I started to notice that a lot of them weren't running, like every other one, and some were. So I asked questions. It turns out that they're buying up all the cornfield, the soy field, whatever, and they sell to the local power plants. I asked where are they selling the sources. I said, well, why aren't they all running? Because there's not enough demand in the area. Where does the money go? China. China bought the land through straw buyers, owns the land, and you know what I'm talking about, and it's widespread, and people don't know about it. But the one thing that really bothered me was the decayed, fallen down, rusted, polluting the earth that can never be used to grow food again. And they're doing this across the country. People don't know about it. I mean, not only are they polluting the land with windmills, the amount of pollution they're causing to build them. So much goes into it. Could you expound on that, please?
Yeah, one other reason that they stop repairing them or using them is when the subsidies run out, then they're no longer economically viable, so they just
So they
quit
don't care.
repairing. Then they don't care. Costs something like $500,000 to tear one down. In Wisconsin, they were trying to put them up in my area, and they were all doing them with gag clauses on the contracts, but I got one of the contracts. And I went to public meetings that were pretty hot and excited. People who could get money off of them, and the neighbors who had to live with them and get no money. So you can only imagine how that would be. But I got a hold of a contract, and they all had the same thing, that if the utility who owns it or the entity that owns it wants to, they'll remove it. And if they don't want to, you own it. And I talked to the farmers. I'm like, you might own this monstrosity. They're like, oh no, it'll always have value. I'm like, if they could make money by tearing it down, do you think they would? And if it's a loser to tear it down, then it's on you. And again, not getting it. And it's 20, 30 years out, so the next property owner or the kids can figure it out. I want the money today. So you got that problem. Interesting, but there's a realization I caught out of Iowa that Warren Buffett's company wants to build a huge monstrosity of 700, 800 wind towers in Iowa. And Google and Microsoft were fighting it. This is a headline. We're fighting it because they were concerned it was going to raise their electric rates because they have some huge processing centers there that use huge amounts of electricity.
Maybe they're in with China.
Right, so they're fighting each other, and now both Google and Microsoft both claim to be using all green energy, which is complete farce and lie. Is what provides energy at night. So it's interesting, and somebody really should sue them because that's false advertising, and they might be getting a benefit out of the marketplace.
Yeah, so we're just about up on time. We'll get one more question and throw it over to the state representative table here. Deb and then JD. We absolutely have time for both. And we might even have time for Chow, she's short.
So I'm going door to door right now. I'm aware of the problem, and I'm very concerned that people are gonna have to make the decision, do I heat my home or do I have food? What would you tell them if you were me? What solutions can I offer them besides potential one-time fee?
Yeah, that's a really hard toughie. Because first, I feel their pain. I mean, that's a bad place to be in. And I thought about it because I'm always reading, and also I care about people, both personally that I know and just in general. And what do they do in Europe? Where they're in for just a world of hurt. What we have here is a minor taste of what's going to go on there in this winter. And I don't know, short-term subsidies, can you throw more money at them? I think that's also part of the Democrat left thing, is when your electric bills get too big, if you're poor, we'll send you more money and you'd be more hooked into us. Screws the middle class though, doesn't it? They're gonna have to make do. I don't know, do you find some way to consolidate and move in with a friend? Do you get your sister, relative, brother, can you go stay with your kids for a couple of months? I mean, you're gonna have to get creative, I think, and I don't wanna sound harsh, but I mean, the reality of it is, and I don't know, there are, if you're poor enough, there are some programs, but many of them don't help, particularly an older adult on fixed income that has low income. You have kids, you're free on board. You don't have kids, you're in trouble with much of the way our system works. So creativity, I mean, it's
Crazy that we're in this.
it's extremely crazy, and it's unnecessary and wrong. It really, 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 really is. And just as a sidelight to all of this, and I don't want to be too political because I'm recording it and she is, who knows where this will all end up. But I caught, it was in a USA Today article towards the end, and I don't usually read that leftist thing, except when I was traveling, but it talked about after Biden met Putin, I think in June, after he was elected, Putin immediately started massing troops on the Ukrainian border. So either he got a go-ahead or he took a measure of the guy and he started this thing, the conflation. Now, that all created more of a problem than we have. The other interesting fact is Russia is only, this will should give us all a scare. Really, it should. Russia the cutback in Russian energy to the European Union is only 5% of their overall energy. 5% created this world of hurt. 5% reduction. If we have a refinery that goes off, our gas prices are going to skyrocket. When Biden stops draining our reserve, prices are going to go up. And I've seen some economists who are suggesting right after the elections, get ready for $8 a gallon gas.
So JD?
So, education-wise, what do you think the best strategy is to help educate people about the truth? I mean, we don't know the truth, we know the truth, but the truth isn't getting out there. So how do we get it out?
That one is simple, in my opinion, is simple memes. It's one of the projects we're working on at Truth and Energy, just things, simple memes of, wind and solar at cost. I mean, what keeps your lights on when they don't glow? I mean, that sort of stuff. That's one part of it. The other is that polling all tells us, except for the handful of climate crazies, 10 or 20% that are all Democrats, the rest of us don't want to pay for it. And we only want to pay $10, $20 a month max. We're already way over that. So I think that in the political world, it's the pain and the jealousy that China, India, and the rest of the world are not participating. What we do won't make any difference. So you can even agree that even if I concede that CO2 is the problem, John Kerry, the president, say no matter what we do, it doesn't matter. So if it doesn't matter, why would you do that? None of us would throw money on the thing. You could ask them that. Take out your wallet, throw some money on the floor, and let somebody else take it, because that's really all we're doing.
Okay, we only got a couple minutes left. Chow, did you have a question?
I'm from Vietnam, and I didn't grow up during the Vietnam War, but I spoke to people directly from the north.
Hold on a second. He's coming
Oh.
back. He's coming back.
Yeah, my name is Chow Kelly and I'm from Vietnam. Though I didn't grow up during the Vietnam War, I spoke to a lot of people from the north because this history that's not written or taught anywhere in school in Vietnam. So during the Vietnam War, the North communists, Vietnamese communists, they control people's stomach by controlling how much rice each family get per number of family members. Otherwise, because they're afraid that you harbor like the sleeping agents in your house. you know? So, and also that's a way to make everybody in your family have to go to fight the South. That's a must, otherwise you starve. So that's how the North control the people to build and bend them on their knees, to do everything and control the enemies living within, versus the South, abundance of everything and freedom of everything. People protest day and night on everything, just like in America. So that's how they harbor all kinds of sleeping agents, and that's how we can never win the war in Vietnam unless we drop another Hiroshima or Kawasaki there, right? But it didn't happen. So what happened is, when you said earlier about the food, are Americans aware that is where we're heading? Control the stomach, so bend you down to the knees, so you lose all your freedom. And I'm wondering if you have any forums that people like me and know the facts, you can put information in there so that people are aware. Because, like you said, my Facebook and my YouTube, I just get out of 90 days prison of Facebook. And they took one of my YouTube account all the time.
Well, at least they didn't disappear you.
Oh, not yet, I guess. So seriously, I feel like right now I'm in Vietnam, again, in a communist world, but in a more gentle way. Instead of physically putting me in prison, they just silent me totally. And they just give me another 90 days, upload everything on my post, because I post up about Biden. So things like that, I don't know, the legislatures can do anything to
Chow, I put you
help
in
us.
jail once.
So, you know, so that's my concern. We've been through the tough time, we survive again, but I'm not sure about maybe 90% of Americans can survive when it comes here. And it's almost here already, and we are feeling it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chow.
Yeah.
One thing is the history of Vietnam. The Chinese were trying to conquer Vietnam for thousands of years, and whatever it is within the Vietnamese, they wouldn't allow it to happen. The same thing with the Afghanis. Studying history, the Romans tried to keep the Afghanis, and they said they're too much of a headache. So I mean, it's interesting the differences of people, but your point is well taken. Food and energy and food are very much related. And if you make them so darn expensive, it crowds out everything else, because as you pointed out, these folks you're talking to, I have a choice between staying warm enough or not. Also, the control. Switzerland has passed a law that you can't turn your thermostat up in your own home above 66 degrees. And they have posters out to rat your neighbors out. And you know what? Being Swiss, they probably will, because you follow the rules in Switzerland, because it's for the common good. We can't get anywhere even iota towards net zero without all of us, regular folks, using drastically lots less energy. How do you do that? Carbon ration cards, which they've invented. So, I mean, this is where the end game is all. This is why we need to fight back. You need to fight against the ESG. You need to talk to regular people. I'd suggest the pain point for them is the cost. It's just going to cost more. Why should we be building any more electric generation when we're not increasing our need? I mean, where's the answer to that question? Why should we be adding an iota of generation if we don't? Well, because of climate. Well, you know what? It's not going to do a darn bit of good. Why? Chinese, the Indians, the Africans, and everybody else. So why, if it won't do any good, and we don't need it, in a common sense place like New Hampshire, why would you build it? I mean, we got to think about these things. But you got to engage, and we got to get past this. And I don't know that, all the facts I showed you on CO2 and the climate and all of that, factually, you go to some of that, ask them, show me. Oh, it's all show me. Well, no, show me, because there isn't. There is not a peer-reviewed study anywhere that CO2 is causing all of this. I think we had to end, otherwise, I'd continue to talk this topic for multi-hours, actually.
Yeah, I think this is a 4-hour presentation, actually, that he shrunk down for us to fit our time.
You're amazing.
But Frank, thank you so much. Let me give Frank just our one-of-a-kind Live Free or Die coffee mug. It's our,
I like that, live free or die, yes, I like that.
Really appreciate it, Frank. And there's a couple of envelopes on the table that says NHLP. That's the leadership pack that hosts us. And Frank donated his time. But we also have essay contests, Keep the First Nation primary, did a big fundraiser, helped with General Boldock for the day after the primary. So if you'd like to donate, there's an envelope on the table. But these are free lectures, and we like to keep them that way. And Frank, thank you for donating your time to come out here and do this. It was awesome.
You're very welcome, all of you. These, you guys are welcome to take, I have more of them as long as they're put to use. Feel free to take these. They have facts, they're kind of meant, I know they're dense and have a lot, but they're meant for you to be able to talk to and have talking points and things for other people that cover the major points. And if you have any, want where these facts come from, let me know, I can provide those. And the contact is on the brochure.
So ladies and gentlemen, today is Monday, September 26, 2022. We're here at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire. We just finished watching the Beyond the Soundbites, session number 4, organized by New Hampshire National Committeeman Chris Aker, with speaker guests, and the topic is the energy. Thank you for watching, everyone. Joe Kelly from Level 5 Media, reporting live in Manchester, New Hampshire. Thanks for watching. Signing out.